I'm sorry, but I can't agree with you. The idea that my sister-in-law isn't attending high school is just too embarrassing to share with others. My sister-in-law, Elizabeth, always looked down on me for not going to high school, considering me inferior. She married into a family of highly educated elites after turning 30. But I wonder, how well is that marriage going to work out? My name is Eleanor. I'm 26. I barely have any memories of my parents. They died in a car accident when I was 3, hit by a drunk driver. What little I remember of them, the stories my grandparents told me, and the photos in my parents' cell phone of them with me. That's all I know about them. I think my grandparents' grief over losing their son and daughter-in-law was even greater than my lack of memories. That day, I was left with my grandparents because I had a fever, and my parents went out for New Year's shopping and never came back. If I hadn't been sick, I might have been in that accident too. My grandparents ran a small, thriving sandwich shop, popular because of its proximity to schools and factories. To minimize waste, they only offered 3 types of sandwiches, each for $5, regardless of size. I used to think even one type of sandwich would be enough, my grandfather would say. We keep everything at $5 to make the math easier, she said. Thanks to that, I could help out from a young age. In the evenings, the shop transformed into a deli, offering side dishes and 3 types of salads, a lifesaver for busy housewives. My grandfather once trained at a famous high-end restaurant in his youth. I quit to marry your grandmother and run a sandwich shop, he said. I loved that sandwich shop. In my 3rd year of middle school, my grandmother suffered a stroke. Fortunately, it wasn't serious, but she was left with mild paralysis on her right side. She could do light tasks, but the demanding work of running the sandwich shop became impossible. I wasn't fond of studying and chose not to go to high school, instead helping out at the sandwich shop. My grandmother once said to me, "It would be better to finish high school." But for me, the sandwich shop was more important. After learning all the basics of cooking from my grandfather and 3 years passing, my grandmother, who diligently pursued rehabilitation, officially returned to work in the sandwich shop. Eleanor, if you're going to make a living with cooking, you should study properly. Grandpa can't help but be too soft on his granddaughter. Following her advice, I began training in a high-end restaurant. The owner, a former trainee colleague of my grandfather's. Eleanor's grandpa was a better cook than me, but he gave up continuing this restaurant for a woman and became a sandwich maker. Told me. Such drama in my grandparents' life, the owner said. Just because you're his granddaughter, don't expect any special treatment. And trained me rigorously. This thought saddened me. I learned knife sharpening, usage, handling of ingredients, and most importantly, proper customer service. I realized why my grandfather insisted I learn from an outside restaurant. Working in the sandwich shop, being family, I was somewhat spoiled. Perhaps my grandparents were overly indulgent with me, their granddaughter, perhaps to compensate for the loss of their son and daughter-in-law. This thought saddened me. I fell in love with William, a customer at the high-end restaurant. He came to celebrate a big business deal led by his boss, and we discovered during our conversation that he was a regular at our sandwich shop. In high school, I was there almost every day. Those delicious sandwiches, even the extra large size, for just $5, really helped me out. William reminisced. I didn't remember him, but he remembered me. Come to think of it, there was a middle school girl helping out. That girl was you. After that, William came to the restaurant once a month, after getting his paycheck. On his days off, he would buy sandwiches from my family's shop, and we would have park dates. William, 28 years old, worked in sales at a home appliance manufacturer, having been employed for 6 years since graduating from university. He listened intently as I shared about only finishing middle school, the loss of my parents, and my training in the high-end restaurant after my grandmother's stroke. You've had it tough. From now on, I want to make you happy, he proposed. At that time, I also learned that William had an older sister, 3 years his senior, who graduated from a prestigious university and worked for a major corporation. My sis is the type who takes pride in her education and company name. She's unpleasant, and that's why she's still unmarried even after turning 30. She would become your sister if we got married. When we get married, she'll become my sister-in-law. I didn't want to have a negative impression in advance. William's honesty is both his strength and his weakness. Eleanor, if I introduce you to her, she might say something unpleasant. But I'm definitely going to marry you. I'll protect you. Yeah, I hope we can get along, with your help, William. I didn't regret my choices, but I was saddened by the thought of being rejected by a family member based on my education alone. I wanted to get along with my sister-in-law. When we announced our engagement to William's family, his sister said exactly what William had feared. It's too embarrassing to tell anyone that Eleanor isn't going to high school. That's what was said to me. Yet, that didn't lead to the cancellation of the wedding. I thought we didn't even need a ceremony, but my grandparents... I want to see my grandchild's big day. Persuaded by his plea, I reluctantly went through with the ceremony. We didn't have a grand reception, just a small party room. My grandfather and the restaurant owner showcased their culinary skills, and it was very well received. I'm relieved. Be happy, my grandmother said tearfully. I'll show you your great-grandchildren, so you and Grandpa have to stay healthy. As I had this conversation with my grandparents, my sister-in-law was glaring at us coldly. It was sad to see her barely touching the wonderful food. There will be challenges ahead, but I'll do my best, I thought to myself. We considered renting an apartment, but I opposed it. I wanted to become close with William's family, quickly. Of course, that includes Elizabeth as well. You know I don't have parents, right? I love my grandparents, but I've always longed for a big family, and for siblings too, I said. William quickly agreed. We bought typical souvenirs from our honeymoon in the tropics and began our new life at William's family home. I look forward to getting along with both of you. As soon as I said that, tears started to fall. What's wrong, Eleanor? Did something happen on the trip? Jane asked in a hurry. William, absolutely not! He waved his hands in front of his face, denying it, and then said, I'm just so happy to have people I can call parents, he said. Then Jane hugged me. Eleanor, let's get along well from now on. I think of you as my real daughter, she said. Elizabeth whispered softly, That's so silly. But I ignored it. Jane suggested that we split the dinner duties. I would cook on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Jane on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Eleanor, you might find this strange, but after cooking for my family for so many years, I just want to eat someone else's cooking. Besides, our kitchen is a bit too small for 2 people to cook together. Jane explained. I didn't fully understand it at first, but then I remembered my grandmother used to enjoy and compliment the meals I prepared for her. There's something special about eating a meal someone else has cooked, she had said. Even though I always thought her cooking was better, for breakfast, since my father-in-law, Elizabeth, and William all have different work schedules, everyone just grabs whatever they want. I thought that was fine. If you'd like, I can prepare breakfast. But I decided to offer. Back home, my grandmother and I used to make a standard breakfast every morning together. Even if there were slight differences in serving times, being in the kitchen always gave me something to do, so it was never a burden. This suggestion turned out to be a big hit, and I was overwhelmed by all the compliments, though my sister-in-law didn't eat any of it. I heard that she originally didn't eat breakfast, but when she saw the breakfast I made, yuck! There are things here I can't stand. It's nauseating so early in the morning. That comment was a bit disheartening. Furthermore, as I saw her off to work, good effort trying to score points so early in the morning. She said that spitefully and left. I found myself with nothing to do by mid-morning after cleaning and doing laundry with my Jane. I was thinking of helping out at my family sandwich shop, at least during lunchtime. While wondering about working so soon after getting married, Jane responded, "That's fine. If you can handle half the housework, maybe I'll look for a part-time job." She seemed a bit excited, and soon found a part-time job as a cashier at a nearby supermarket. A week later, life gradually settled down. William and I got along well, and I was on good terms with my in-laws, except I still couldn't connect with my sister-in-law. Learning that I was working part-time at the sandwich shop. "So you end up in a low-end, part-time job after all. Well, it can't be helped since you didn't go to high school." She scoffed. The first time I made dinner, she barely touched the food, even though I made chicken and stew at William's request. "I heard you were at a high-end restaurant. Is this what you can make?" she said disdainfully. "You're silly, sis. It's pointless to serve restaurant-style dishes at home. That's the kind of food you enjoy eating out." Indeed, replicating restaurant dishes at home would be excessively costly. "Oh, really? I don't eat high-calorie food at night." I would have been careful if she had told me. I hadn't realized that. "But it's really delicious. At least try the stew." Jane tried to cover for me, saying, but Elizabeth didn't touch her meal, and went to her room. From then on, whenever I was in charge of dinner, she began to eat out. William said, "Don't worry about my sister." Told me not to worry, but I wanted to somehow get along with his sister. One day, Elizabeth, "Do you want to eat this cake with me?" She came to me with a cake filled with dried fruits and asked. Honestly, I have no particular dislikes, except for dried fruits. Yet, I was so happy she asked me to join her that I brewed some tea, and we ate together. It was tough, and I couldn't taste anything as I washed it down with the tea, but I was just happy for the moment. I reported this to William, with a smile, when he returned from work. But he looked troubled and said, "I'm sorry, I accidentally told my sister that you don't like dried fruits." I didn't understand at first, but then it hit me hard. The realization that she was watching me eat the cake with a sarcastic smile was devastating. The fact that I was disliked enough to be subjected to such malice was painful. I felt foolish for thinking we might have been getting closer. One day, Elizabeth left the house in formal attire. Apparently, she was attending the wedding reception of a junior colleague from her company. I think Elizabeth is quite beautiful, albeit a bit stern-looking. She's completely different from me, who is often comforted with the saying, "A woman's charm is her best attribute." "Even if she's somewhat beautiful, with that personality," William commented. But when she returned, she was furious and yelled, "Don't mess with me! Why should I be looked down upon by a woman who flattered male colleagues to get married, despite not going to university?" It seemed her inhibitions were lowered due to alcohol. Obviously, a charming girl is more appealing than a hysterical woman over 30 who prides herself on her education. William made an unnecessary remark. Are all siblings like this? His comment redirected Elizabeth's anger towards me. I worked hard since middle school, thinking about my future, studied hard to get into a good high school and university, and landed a job at a top company. Seeing someone like you, who made no effort and just got pampered because of a slightly unfortunate background, and didn't even go to high school, irritates me to no end. I understood why Elizabeth disliked me, even though I didn't choose to lose my parents and have made efforts in life. Elizabeth's words made me feel so sad and frustrated that I was on the verge of tears. Enough is enough! Jane's stern voice quieted Elizabeth, but she muttered under her breath, "No one understands me, and I'm so sick of these unintelligent people," before storming off to her room in a fast, barely audible mumble. I wonder where we went wrong in raising her. Jane sighed. "Eleanor, how about we rent an apartment nearby and live there, just the two of us? I can't stand watching this." I appreciated his concern. "Or else, wait until my sister finds a marriage partner and gets married." Elizabeth had been eagerly searching for a marriage partner since just before turning 30, but still hadn't succeeded. "With that attitude, I doubt she'll find anyone," William remarked. However, it seemed Elizabeth finally found her ideal partner. My fiancé is coming to greet the family. You're in charge of all the cooking preparations, okay? She suddenly announced to me, obviously elated. Are you sure you want me to cook? Show off the skills you learned at the high-end restaurant. Honestly, I'd rather not introduce a high school dropout sister, but if the cooking is amazing, it might distract from that. This is probably the only time you, having not gone to high school, can be of any use to me, she said. All this time I had been patient, wanting to get along, but now I was nearing my limit. Better not regret it, I whispered to myself. I briefly considered making a disastrously bad meal. I decided to share my plan with William. I get how you feel, Eleanor. For a moment I thought go for it. So, you're against it? I get it, she's your sister. You wouldn't want to see her unhappy. No, that's not it. Wouldn't it be better if she got married and left? Oh, right. That makes sense. Thinking about it, William was right. It's better to have Elizabeth get married and leave this house than anger her fiancé and risk breaking off the engagement. Understood. I'll prepare a feast with all my might. I asked the owner of my master's restaurant for help to get fresh fish and vegetables that you can't find in a regular supermarket, and prepared some high-end seasonings that I don't usually use. I started the preparations in the morning. Since my fiancé was coming over for dinner to meet everyone, I had plenty of time. The table was adorned with a variety of beautiful dishes that could rival those of a high-end restaurant. All the vegetables were intricately carved, showcasing skilled techniques. At the center of the table was a flower made from carved ice, a piece of ice art. Although I struggled with studies, art was my forte and my only hobby. I had asked my grandfather to order the ice from an ice maker, finished carving it in the morning, and stored it in the freezer, having William bring it out just before the guests arrive. Elizabeth's fiancé, a high-educated elite working at the same company as Elizabeth, was exactly the kind of man Elizabeth would like. He was 35 years old, and in my opinion, not quite as handsome as William. I never expected to see such amazing ice art in a regular home. The food is delicious too. Did Eleanor make this? He was impressed. Yes, it's embarrassing, but Eleanor only finished middle school. Well, having such skills without even going to high school is quite an achievement. His condescending tone reminded me of Elizabeth. Elizabeth whispered, "Better than I expected." So I responded with my best smile. Of course, I want Elizabeth to be happy. I responded with a very pleasant smile. William and the in-laws were also delighted. Amazing! Delicious! They expressed their joy. Maybe I should ask you for help with some celebration in the future. Of course I'll pay for the ingredients. Right, Elizabeth? Elizabeth nodded ambiguously to Jane's comment. I certainly plan to bill them later. They would surely be surprised by the amount. Afterward, Elizabeth successfully got married. It was a lavish wedding, befitting an elite couple. I contributed to the event by carving ice sculptures. Amazing! I had no idea William's wife was so talented. Elizabeth seemed to think I was stealing her spotlight at her own wedding reception, as she looked unhappy throughout the event. That day, I overheard Elizabeth's colleagues speaking ill of her in the restroom. They probably didn't realize I was her sister-in-law. Their comments about her were pretty harsh. They described her as a nasty woman who flaunted her education, always trying to one-up others, disliked by all the women, and they mentioned that her new husband was a well-known mama's boy. Apparently, one of the female employees had previously dated him. Elizabeth, being disliked by her female colleagues, was not privy to this information. I felt dark clouds looming over her supposedly happy married life. Sure enough, within a month, Elizabeth wanted a divorce and returned to her parents' house. Right from the wedding day, they were pressuring me to have a baby, telling me I'm not getting any younger. Jane even marked my menstrual cycle on the calendar, demanding we try for a baby on certain days. Can you believe it? My husband just does whatever Jane says. It seemed like a rather intense situation with Jane. And to top it off, they called me incompetent because I have an education but can't do housework. My husband never stands up for me. I'm so done. For Elizabeth, who always prided herself on her education, this must have been a severe blow to her pride. You're saying all this, but it's only been a month. You lack patience. Exactly. A little bit of strictness from me is just what you need. It appeared neither father-in-law nor Jane were very sympathetic towards their daughter. Of course, I also thought it was her own responsibility. I know this isn't the best time to say this, but since I often don't get a chance to meet you, I wanted to share some news. I'm pregnant. I'm 3 months along. What? Elizabeth's expression at that moment was something to behold. For the first time, I think I understood a little bit what it feels like to have the upper hand. Oh, really? With all the troubles I'm facing, you seem to be having a good time. Don't you think it's sad for a child to have a mother who didn't even finish high school? Elizabeth was, as usual, unchanged. I don't think so at all. Eleanor is a great cook and will definitely be a kind mom. You should worry about yourself. That's what William said. What did you say? Also, when the baby is born, we plan to turn your room into the nursery. So even if you come back, there won't be a room for you. What? You can't do that. Elizabeth was clearly flustered. It's a decision we made as a family. Father-in-law confirmed. Dad, that's terrible. You're married now. Try to be a good wife. Jane also said in a dismissive tone. That's awful! Don't you understand how much I've suffered? Mom, you say that because you also have an impressive education. I'm bound to have brilliant children. They'll definitely attend a good school and work at a top company. This is decided. What do you have to say? I couldn't help but laugh at this. Your mother-in-law sounds just like you. I'm sure you'll get along well. After I said that, Elizabeth bit her lip and fell silent. I'll be scolded if I stay away from home too long, so I'm going back. With that, Elizabeth left for home. It was the first time I saw Elizabeth's dejected figure, but I couldn't feel too sorry for her. But I feel sorry for the child that would be born to Elizabeth. Yeah, I hope Elizabeth changes her attitude by looking at Jane, but it might be difficult. The future is uncertain, and children can't choose their parents. Besides, children don't always grow up the way their parents want them to. Some parents, like mine, don't even get to see their children grow up. What we can do is make the child we're expecting happy with the support of our whole family. My grandparents are thrilled about seeing their great-grandchild. I think I understand how my parents must have felt now. When I said that, William agreed. Yeah, we have to shower our child with love and raise them well, he said, pulling me closer.